Odell Beckham to the 49ers. Those rumors are heating up. Jessie and I will be talking about that and much more on tonight's Hammer Nayls Show. Hey everybody! It is Thursday. It is Thursday night. Wow, look at that! I'm jet setting a couple of days ahead of time. I got in my time warp machine, and I'm already on to Thursday. It's Tuesday night, which means it's Hammer Nayls Show. We've been doing this on Tuesday night for about a month now, and I consistently say Thursday night because it just got so used to saying that. But it's Tuesday night, Hammer Nayls Show. A lot of stuff going on around the 49ers. A lot to talk about. Jessie, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. Old habits die hard, Jack. That's all that is. Don't worry about it.
Well, old habits die hard. And then they also say that old dogs, it's tough to teach old dogs new trick. And I'm definitely an old dog. So both of those things do not work in my favor.
Well, I'll also say that by the time that you get it figured out that it's Tuesday, we'll probably switch back to Thursday.
Right. That's exactly what will happen. That's the way these things roll. But, just the 49ers coming off of their bye week this week, they're going to get I think this is going to be an interesting matchup coming up on Sunday night against the Chargers. I think it's going to be a little bit tougher than a lot of people are kind of making it out to be right now, just looking around at the Twitter sphere and what people are saying over there. Right now, one of the things, though, with the 49ers, you look at the power rankings around the NFL, and the 49ers actually are in a pretty good position according to those. They are ranked currently, I believe, 10th in the power rankings, the latest that came out.
Yeah, they are ranked 10th right now, and the teams directly in front of them are the Giants at 9 and the Seahawks at 8. And then directly behind them, we have the 6-3 Jets, the 5-4 Bengals, the 5-3 Titans, and the 5-3 Chargers. So that's kind of right where they're at.
Right in that middle. And so the question is, does San Francisco belong in that top 10? What do you think? Are they a top 10 team in the NFL right now?
I don't think that's fair. Personally, I mean, I expect that they will be there by the end of the season, but we're talking right now. We're 8 games into the season. They're coming off of a bye. They still haven't beaten really a good team other than, I think Seattle's proven that they're a good team now. So that's like the only real credible win that they have on their record if we're looking at it. The other real piece of competition that they played in the Kansas City Chiefs mollywopped them. I don't think it's fair that a 4-4 team is above a 5-3 team and a 6-3 team. I mean, I know that the Jets probably, there's a chance that they fizzle out as the season goes, most likely, but they are 6-3. They just beat the Buffalo Bills, and the 49ers are 4-4. They're 2 games behind them if they were fighting for the same standing. So no, I don't think that's fair at all. I don't know how they're ahead of the team like the Jets and probably even Tennessee, because Tennessee, yes, their record is 5-3, but they almost beat Kansas City. They took them to overtime with their backup quarterback. So yeah, there's no way.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know how you can put the 49ers in the top 10 right now. I mean, this is, that's almost like saying that Alabama, the 49ers Alabama, right? And so that's why you give them that benefit of the doubt. I don't think they deserve the benefit of the doubt. They haven't shown themselves to be a team that's consistent enough to be among those top 10. I think we both would say that they're talent-wise, they belong in that top 10, in that top echelon of the NFL, but the results right now don't speak for it. So saying that the 49ers are the 10th best team in the NFL right now at 4-4 when they're 7th in the NFC, let alone NFL, I think that's a stretch.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, at the end of the season, do I expect that they're there? Absolutely, I do, especially with all that talent. But at this very moment, these are power rankings. You're ranking based off of who teams have played, who they've beaten, margin of victory, those types of things. And the 49ers just don't belong there. They have, okay, so they've beaten, let's go through their wins. Seattle, that's a quality win now that we look at it. the Rams twice, which the Rams are terrible. They're not a good football team. I'm sorry. They are not a good football team at all. And who was their other one? Carolina? That's not a good football team. So no, they don't have a quality win outside of Seattle. And that was week 2 before Seattle was really even Seattle. So
yeah. And that's why, I know we weren't necessarily going to talk about this, but just looking forward to this game on Sunday night against the Los Angeles Chargers, right? The 49ers last I remember, the 49ers lost to the Falcons 28-14 in Atlanta.
Yes.
And I think I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that I saw where the Chargers beat the Falcons on Sunday in Atlanta, right?
No, I think you're making that up.
No, I'm being kind of a smart ass on it because I see people who are saying that the 49ers are going to be able to win this game, should be able to dog walk them is one of the things that I saw. I see people pointing out to the amount of yards that the Chargers are giving up on the ground, all pointing to the 49ers destroying the Chargers apparently on Sunday night. And I don't know. I don't see it. The Chargers have given up over 131 yards in 5 of the last 6 games, but they've won 3 of those 5. So just because they're giving up a lot of yards on the ground doesn't mean that they're not winning games. And it's going to be a fun game to watch on Sunday night.
Yeah, and I would say just based off of health of the Chargers are in a bad spot. They're in a similar spot to what the 49ers were when they went and played the Falcons. They're just completely injured. And so based off of that, I would say, yeah, the 49ers should win, but I don't know. There's just something about when you play an elite quarterback that you can just never count that other team out. And you can call it what you want, but Herbert's an elite quarterback in this league.
Yeah, those are the guys that have a tendency where if you keep that game close, they're going to win at the end, right? That's what they did in Atlanta. We've seen that happen to the 49ers a couple of different times this year, and so and in the past even. And then we also, so just really quick, looking over the records of the teams, we had KW 2421 says true, but they haven't lost since they picked up CMC. I'm pretty sure that McCaffrey played in the Chiefs game, and don't remember the 49ers winning that one either, but
small sample size. They've had 2 games and they're 1-1. So
there you go. They're 500. They are 500 with Christian McCaffrey. They are a 500 team, and they're actually 500 on the season as well. So what are you going to do? So I think we both agree here. 49ers don't belong in the top 10. If you don't like what we just said, please go ahead and yell at Jesse. He deserves all the blame for that.
I'll always take the yelling at, no problem.
Another thing that came up this week, it's a little bit of a, transitioning off, and this was really something that took place over the offseason is, Deebo Samuel going back and forth. And, there were reports over the offseason that Deebo Samuel had requested a trade. I don't think he ever confirmed that. We were talking about it ahead of time before the show, and you were saying, what you're telling me, what I remember it was that Deebo Samuel told everybody not to talk for him, and that these reporters who were saying that Deebo Samuel requested a trade shouldn't be talking for him, that it should be coming directly from him. And it was never verified that he did or didn't. I know for sure that he never said that he didn't come out straight out and say it. And the 49ers never said that either. But over the weekend, there was an interview on Overtime that came out, and in fact, Deebo Samuel requested a trade from the 49ers during the negotiation process this last offseason. Knowing for a fact now that he did request a trade, does that change the way you look at the way things took place over the offseason, and then even where things are now between Deebo and the 49ers?
No, not for me, because I believe that he did request a trade. I mean, the thing is that when it was reported, I forget who it was at this point. It's been so long, but whoever it was reported that they talked to Deebo directly. They didn't hear it from a friend or a family member or even his agent. They talked to Deebo directly, and Deebo came out and spun it as if people are talking for him and his agent and all these other things. But one thing he did not ever do was deny that he requested that trade. And so I was operating under the assumption that he did request the trade. So for me, nothing changes. I do believe that the trade was more like, hey, if you're not going to pay me, I'm willing to leave. Not that I necessarily want out of San Francisco. I don't want out of San Francisco because of, XYZ. But if you're not willing to pay me, I am certainly willing to leave. Like, I'm going to go where the money is at. And when you look at it in hindsight, two of Dandy's clients were traded this offseason that are receivers. And that is who Samuel is represented by. You had A.J. Brown get traded. You had Brown. What's the other? His last name's Brown as well, I think, from
Hollywood Brown.
Yeah, Hollywood Brown went from the Ravens to the Cardinals. So two of his clients did get traded. The one, actually, the most surprising out of all of them, just by the way that they act on the field, like Deebo is really just seems all about his business on the field. He's a little flashy, yes, but he also is like, you can just tell he pours his heart into his craft. And when they lose, he wears that heavy. Mm-hmm. I was actually shocked just by the way that their demeanor is on the field, that DK Metcalf, out of all of them, was the one that didn't really cause any issues at all. Like, there was some small things, but nothing crazy came out about DK requesting a trade or anything like that. He's also Dandy's client. So, yeah, I mean, for me, this doesn't change anything. I'm glad that it got confirmed, because I had a lot of people calling me an idiot saying he didn't request a trade. And unless we hear it directly from the player, then it doesn't count. And I'm like, okay, well, here you go. We heard now.
That's probably why I was thinking that, because they were calling you an idiot. And
yeah, and you're like, well, they're probably right.
Well, let me ask you this, because I agree with you on everything that you've said in terms of that. So I can't just keep agreeing with you on all that. So when you look back at this offseason, do you think that part of where Deebo Samuel is right now, in terms of coming back from an injury, the slow start to this season, all plays in part into this trade request and everything that took place during the offseason?
100%. And I think, because I didn't realize it was a 3-part series. I did see the first part when they went through like the initial negotiation period. Mm-hmm. And Deebo alluded to the fact that he wished that they could get a deal done quick, because he wanted to work out with Trey this offseason. And that contract was holding him up, which I completely understand. You're not going to go out and go all in on working out and doing these things if you have that much money at risk. You're going to do enough to stay like in shape for a regular guy, but you're not going to be in football shape, because you can't risk that injury. You're trying to get paid. So this is something that lingered all the way through until literally the 11th hour. Well, I got to imagine Deebo wasn't out there doing the craziest things to stay in absolute tip-top shape, because he didn't want to get hurt.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you here. And I'll point to these few things that we know. In 2019 was his rookie season, correct? And he had some injuries early on in 2019 with I think he came in with was it a foot injury?
Foot was in 2020.
Okay, so he had some injuries early on in 2020, or 2019, if I remember correctly. But 2020, that was, I think, a foot injury, caused him to not be able to work out as hard as he wanted to, do all those types of things. And then he dealt with hamstring injuries and soft tissue injuries throughout the season. This season, trade request, contract not getting done. He's come out this season. He's not put up numbers that were similar to, not even close to where he was a year ago. Really, when you look at the numbers that he put up last year, his numbers this year are more along the lines of what his first 2 years were, right? 12.1 yards per reception or whatever, but he was at 18.2 last season, and he's not even close to that right now. And on top of that, you have the injury bug that's bitten him, and he cost him at least one game. And usually when that stuff starts to happen with Deebo Samuel, what the history shows is that it's going to be a continual thing throughout the season. I think that all this trade request and so on and so forth, it had definitely played a role in where he is right now.
Yeah, absolutely it did. There's no doubt about it. And, but then the flip side of that is like, well, I mean, you can't really blame the player. He's just, this is his one chance to secure the bag. And if he goes out and gets injured this offseason, breaks an ankle or something crazy like that, that might be it for him. He may never, ever get paid. So I get it. I understand it. I appreciate it. But I think that it absolutely is playing a factor in how his season has gone so far. I don't think there's really, I don't know how anybody could dispute otherwise.
Yeah, I don't either. And and I agree with you when it comes to Samuel. I mean, you've got to do what you need. You need to do what you need to do in order to get that money or do whatever it is you feel comfortable with. I don't hold any grudge against him for that. I'm just from a performance standpoint, you can see that there's been a little bit of a slide back this season with him from where he was a season ago. So hopefully for the 49ers' sake, he'll turn that around and be able to get back to the old Deebo in the second half of the season, because I think that's one of the main things that the 49ers are going to need this year. Sticking on the wider.
Yeah, they're definitely, if they want to be at their best, they're going to need Deebo to be at his best. No doubt about it.
Yeah. Well, and even if Deebo Samuel isn't at his best, maybe, according to the reports that are out there, they're interested in bringing in another wide receiver. So Odell Beckham Jr. to the 49ers, maybe Deebo Samuel doesn't have to be at his best for them to get back to this, get to the NFC Championship game, or maybe even take one step further and get to the Super Bowl this year. Where are you on Odell Beckham Jr. becoming a 49er this year?
Man, this one's tough because if it's for the rest of the year, I don't mind it. But it sounds like he's looking for a multi-year deal, and teams are willing to possibly give him a multi-year deal. I love the name. I love the player when he's fully healthy. But this is a guy who I believe now is 30 years old, is coming off of a second ACL injury to the same ACL, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if I'm willing to pay that guy. That's, again, probably better than Jennings. I don't think that there's any people that would argue that. But if we pay this guy to be a multi-year option, this is the last time he's going to get paid in his career. He's going to want a sizable amount of money. He's got a big name, so he'll probably get good money, at least incentive-laden money. And he's, the fifth best option on the team? Fourth, fifth? Yeah, fifth. Probably the fifth best option on the team. To me, that's a luxury. That when you get an Odell Beckham, he's a luxury player for what the 49ers have. And I'll take that luxury for the rest of the year. But if it's a multi-year deal, for me, that kind of makes me sour on bringing in Odell Beckham, just because I don't know who he is at 30 years old coming off of a second ACL. I know who the name is. I know what the best Odell Beckham Jr. looks like, but I would be shocked if you're getting that guy. So for me, I would say I would rather not take that risk, and I would let another team sign him to a multi-year deal if that's what it comes down to.
Okay, let's take the multi-year deal out of it, because that might be what it is. Let's just say he's willing to do a deal to join the 49ers for the rest of the season. He's willing to come in, sign a deal with the 49ers, prove that he's healthy so that he can go out this offseason and get that multi-year deal. Do you do it?
Then I'm doing it in a heartbeat. Yeah, of course. Okay. Yeah,
okay.
Yes, absolutely. I'm doing it. And that changes everything. I would do it in a heartbeat, because there's no long-term risk. You are getting a player that, like I said, is going to be an upgrade probably over your weakest starting wide receiver. And at the very least, he's a threat. Yes, 100% I'm doing that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I put this out on Twitter today. Who do you take? Do you take Odell Beckham Jr. or do you take Juwan Jennings? Who would you rather have? And I was really surprised by the responses that I've received to that so far, because if I'd put that out as a poll, I think more than 50% would have been saying to stick with Juwan Jennings, that they don't want Odell Beckham Jr. in the locker room, all kinds of different things. It doesn't make sense to me. What one person put it best, and he said people are gonna tell you Juwan Jennings because they want the bird in the hand instead of the one that's over there in the bush. They want that bird in the hand. It's that kind of a syndrome, and I agree with them on that. You know what you're going to get with Juwan Jennings. You're not quite 100% sure on Beckham because of the injury issue, but there's very little doubt in my mind that if Odell Beckham is close to being healthy, there's little doubt that he's not a better wide receiver than what the 49ers have currently at number 3 with Juwan Jennings or Ray McLeod or anybody beyond Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. And so if the 49ers can get Odell Beckham and get him to understand that that's the role that they'd be willing to bring him in at and help him get himself up to where he is the guy, you need to go make that move.
There's a narrative that OBJ is bad in the locker room, which I really, truly don't understand where this comes from. The Cleveland issues were very, very clear that that's a Baker Mayfield problem. Baker Mayfield did the same exact thing. He went to Carolina and ostracized himself. So what OBJ did to counteract that, to get out of Cleveland, I'm sorry, you may think that's over the top, but all of his teammates seem to side with OBJ. And that tells me that OBJ is not a locker room problem at all. So I don't understand where this locker room issue with OBJ comes from. I get maybe there were some things early on with the Giants, but Cleveland loved him. The Giants are kicking the tires on trying to bring him back now, so it couldn't have been that bad. I get it's a new regime, but the owner's still the same, so it couldn't have been that bad. And the Rams loved him, absolutely loved him. They went and won a Super Bowl with him. I don't understand where this malcontent narrative comes from with OBJ. I really don't.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know where it comes from either. What did he do in New York? Didn't he like knock down the kicking stand at one point on the
yeah, I think he got
then,
beat up by the kicker's net, if I remember correctly.
Right. And then he went back and asked it to marry him, if I remember correctly, all kinds of fun stuff like that. Whatever. I mean, you look at the guy as a player, take all that stuff out. The guys that have played with him, for the most part, like you said, they don't complain about him. They talk in glowing terms about him. Odell Beckham Jr., the Rams don't win the Super Bowl last year if he's not on their team. I know that the MVP goes to Cooper Kupp because of his performance, but they don't beat the 49ers in the NFC Championship game if they don't, without Odell Beckham Jr. on offense.
Mm-hmm.
He was a stud in the playoffs. He really was. I know Kupp still had a better game, say, against who was it? Tampa Bay, but Beckham was still putting up numbers and all the way through, even right up until the point where he tore his knee up in the Super Bowl. He was a big piece of that. And without Odell Beckham, the 49ers probably make it to the Super Bowl. Really, when you go back to that game, it was two guys that the Rams picked up in the middle of the season, end of the season. They don't beat the 49ers to go to the Super Bowl if they don't have Odell Beckham Jr. at wide receiver on offense, and they don't beat the 49ers if they don't have Eric Weddle playing safety on defense. Yep. That was the difference for the Rams in that game.
I agree 100%. Like I said, so just to clarify, put a nice little bow on it. If it's a 1-year deal for the rest of the season, I say there is no hesitation on Odell. If it is a multi-year deal, I'm out.
There you go. I agree with you. I don't think the 49ers can do that anyway when you look at everything that they have going on. I know the salary cap's going to go up and all those kind of things. I wouldn't want them to be getting in bed with a guy that's at his age, even moving forward, because I would rather still have Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel over just Odell Beckham Jr. at wide receiver. So that's a good one there. Real quick before we move on, let me take this off. And but there's a super chat I want to hit up before we get too far. And this is a good one because I know this is one of your favorite 49ers, so we need to hit this one. It's from Moonman. He says, Jesse, great content, by the way. Jesse, hat game crazy. This is where he gets into your favorite 49er, Jesse. We know this is your guy. You try to act like he isn't, but he is. Do you guys think Jimmy can give us more second half of the season, the CMC effect in full? What do you think, Jesse?
I actually do. I mean, if Jimmy has a consistent check down option, and for some reason that just gives him all the comfort in the world to go through his reads in the pocket, then yeah, I don't see why not. Plus, the schedule really shapes up for that to happen. You know, I was talking with Sunil last week, and he mentioned that 7 of the final 9 opponents are bottom 10 in scoring defense. So the 49ers offense, adding CMC and having that schedule really should start to break things open and put up a lot of points here. That should be expected for the second half of the season. But one thing that I will say is that Jimmy Garoppolo is a rhythm quarterback. So if that first option is open, he's almost always money. It's when those options are covered and he has to start going through his reads. And let me be clear, I'm not saying he's a one-read quarterback because he certainly does go through his progressions, but he gets happy feet and he starts to panic, starts throwing off his back foot and doing a bunch of stupid things. For some reason, the safety blanket, I'm not saying, I know the reason. CMC is a great player. The safety blanket of CMC being a check down option for him consistently gave him that comfortability in the pocket to where he was able to smoothly go through his progressions against the Rams. And if it wasn't there, he knew he had CMC waiting. So if that is the mentality he can bring and CMC can be that comfort for him, then yeah, I don't see any reason why he couldn't have a better second half of the season.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. I don't know if we've really seen how it's all going to play out with Christian McCaffrey as that check down guy, because we didn't really get a chance to see it against the Chiefs. The Rams are the Rams. The 49ers when the 49ers play against the Rams, it's almost like they know what's going to happen before the ball snaps. So, and part of that is because of they just know them so well, and then they know how to use their personnel to create the matchups that they're looking for. And for the most part, it makes Garoppolo's job pretty easy, especially on first and second down. Third downs, things get a little bit more haywire for him. But I think we'll get a better idea of that this week against the Chargers, a team that they're not as familiar with. I think we'll get a better feel for if Garoppolo is really there, and if it's actually McCaffrey as the check down guy that really makes him more comfortable. I think we're going to find that out this week a little bit better.
Absolutely. And I want to address Odd Job's comment as well. He says Trey Lance is a one-read quarterback. That, sir, is extremely incorrect. You can literally watch a quarterback. If you watch all 22, especially the 49ers, not all teams have this luxury, but they have a stripe on their helmet, some of those guys, and you can tell where that stripe is pointing. That's where they're looking. He goes through his reads. So that is incorrect.
How do you know where he's looking, Jesse? How do you know that his eyes are looking in the same direction? Are his eyes stuck in his head with that stripe where he can't look to the side? I'm giving you a hard time.
Yeah,
I'm giving you a hard time. I'm being a jerk. No, you're right. You're right. He's not a one-read quarterback. He does go through progressions. You can see it on the film, even during his time in the few starts that he has with the 49ers. Sometimes he needs to do it a little bit quicker than others and so on, whatever. But he's not just a one-read. He's not. Let's put it this way. Trey Lance is not a one read and run quarterback. That's definitely an inaccurate statement. That's almost as accurate as his throw against the Bears in the first half to Tyler Kroft.
Which, by the way, was not accurate.
Thank you. Let's see. Okay, let's go on. Let's move on. So we covered Odell Beckham. Jimmy Garoppolo had a good conversation on him. That wasn't planned. But since we're already talking about quarterbacks, and it's time to vote. You know, everybody's putting in their votes today. When you go to the ballot box today, did you guys vote for Tom Brady to be a 49er in 2023?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I actually put out a video on this on Saturday, and one of the things that I did say in that video, and I'm glad that he was able to put together a last-minute drive, so now everybody's back on the Tom Brady train. But one thing that I said on Saturday when I made that video is that he is not washed. I do live here in Tampa. I do see every throw because that's the game that's always on here. I was fortunate enough to go to the Ravens and Tampa Bay game in person. He is far from washed as far as physically making those throws. Now, mentally, the other thing that I also said before the season started, I said, if he is truly going through a divorce or marital issues, I don't think the Bucs are a threat, because I think that there's a lot of mental things that we just can't factor for. And I think so far that has really played out. That has definitely played out. So now the divorce is behind him. They got a big win on Sunday. Probably a win that, I mean, not only the team needed, but he needed just to kind of get over things. The way things played out were absolutely perfect. Man, I'm not saying I want Tom Brady to be here in 2023, but I wouldn't be shocked if the 49ers made that move, assuming he wants to, assuming he wants to continue playing football. I wouldn't be shocked if they made that move.
Huh. That's interesting. Didn't expect that from you, Jesse. See, you threw me a curveball right there. I got my eye on it. That's a good one. I would be surprised. Let me ask you this: if they decide to go with Tom Brady, is Trey Lance's time in San Francisco done?
Yep, 100%. I think so. I think that, to me, again, what do I want and what do I think San Francisco might do are completely different things. Here's why San Francisco might do it. The picks that they traded to get Trey Lance, those expire after 2023. So if you have Tom Brady in 2023, by the time that season ends, regardless of what you have, if Trey Lance requests a trade or whatever happens there, you now have a full stable of picks again in 2024. So you can restart that cycle with a new quarterback. So to me, the way that I see it is that's a reason why Tom Brady may end up coming here. Plus, Shanahan talks a lot about not wanting to make the same mistakes. Well, if that option presents itself again, you definitely made the mistake the first time in keeping Jimmy Garoppolo over Tom Brady. Probably would kick the tires a little bit more this time around. Now, the reasons why they wouldn't make the trade is Kyle's stubborn. Kyle, if he does believe in Trey Lance the way that I believe he does, he probably doesn't want to look stupid, doesn't want egg on his face. And if they go to Trey Lance and Trey Lance just says, listen, I love it. Thank you for drafting me, but I'm not doing this again. I appreciate it. Please trade me. Then they have to really start to weigh their options because they were unwilling to trade Jimmy Garoppolo for less than what his worth was. Do you think that they're willing to trade Trey Lance, who's probably going to net you at best a second-round pick when you gave up 2 first-round picks and a third and spent 3 first-round picks on essentially? Probably not. So I would say it's more likely that it doesn't happen, but would I be shocked if it did happen? No, I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah. So if the 49ers were to try to, they went ahead and they bring in Tom Brady next year. Trey Lance says, get me the hell out of here. I don't want to be here anymore. You guys messing with me too much. You don't think they'd be able to get anything better than a second round for him?
No. Why? I mean, I love Trey Lance, and I think Trey Lance is going to be great. And I would personally wouldn't be a fan of them going to get Tom Brady. But the fact of the matter is there's not a lot of tape on him. He hasn't played football essentially for a big chunk of 3 years, and he's coming off of a major injury. I'd be shocked if they got anything more than a second for him.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't have a whole lot to add to this because what you said about why Tom Brady would be a 49er in 2023, I agree with those things. It's the same. It's kind of along the same lines as to what you hear some people are saying maybe Jimmy Garoppolo was back in 2023, right? It's just have that certain style of play, the one thing that you get with Tom Brady, that one thing that you kind of get with Jimmy Garoppolo, but not as much, is from a play caller standpoint, is I think you know what you're going to get. You know where the ball's going to go. You know you call a play and that ball's going to go where it's supposed to go. I don't think you quite have that confidence with Trey Lance. I don't think that Kyle Shanahan does, at least. I think that's partly what, going back to like the game against Houston last year, I kind of got that feeling early on. Like there was a couple of plays where Trey didn't let go of the ball and took off moving with his legs instead, in which Shanahan was like, come on, man, those are balls that are supposed to be out. He kind of pulled things back a little bit and then went back after it again in the second quarter, late in the second quarter, and you saw him pick up and go from there. So I think that if Tom Brady was to be a 49er in 2023, that's the reason. Do I want him to be a 49er in 2023? I think it's Trey Lance's team. I said this going into this season as well, when it was the talk was all, who's the quarterback going to be? What do you do with Trey Lance? This and that kind of stuff. And if he struggles, and I said, you just keep playing him. You've made your bed with him. This is your quarterback. You don't move off of him just to. This was after Jimmy Garoppolo had re-signed. I was saying you don't come off of Trey Lance to play Jimmy Garoppolo unless he's hurt, and that's the only reason why he's playing right now, in my opinion. So,
yeah, and I agree with that. I don't think that there would have been any chance that Trey didn't start all season if he didn't get hurt, but unfortunately he did, and so now that door opens even more. And like I said, the fact that they're out from under those picks after next season. If you get next season, I think, I don't know. I don't think we talked about the Tom Brady trade, but that was one thing that I said is if for some reason Tom Brady him or Aaron Rodgers became available at the trade deadline, would I trade for them? And I said only if they could commit through 2023, because that's when you're out from under those picks. That's the only way that I would have done it. So that problem is eliminated after this season. If Tom Brady decides he wants to play and he wants to be a 49er and the 49ers agree, well, at the end of that season, you've got a whole new slew of picks. And you may say, okay, well, you know what? Trading for Trey was a waste. And, you ended up having to trade him. You only got a second round pick. But if Tom Brady wins you a Super Bowl, I don't think anybody's going to care about any of that. So
I don't know. I'm going to call timeout right there because I had a lot of people over on my timeline on Twitter tell me that winning a Super Bowl isn't as important as having consistent wins. I had multiple people tell me that the Rams blew it going all in, and that's the reason why that they would rather not go all in and just have a team that's consistently good instead of a team that wins Super Bowls. But I don't know. Maybe that's just my goofy followers on Twitter. I don't know.
Yeah, I think a lot of people say that, and it sounds great. But when you actually win a Super Bowl, that sounds like a lot of people that haven't seen the 49ers win a Super Bowl is what that sounds like to me. That have seen consistent stretches with guys like Harbaugh and really fell in love with that. No, winning a Super Bowl is the most important thing, 100%.
And we talked about this right after the Super Bowl last year, right? When everybody, a lot of 49er fans were talking about buying your Super Bowl and all that kind of stuff. And I just say, you know what? I remember being around in 1994. I remember watching this team lose, having lost to the Cowboys in 92 and 93, go all in and make big moves all over the board that first year of free agency, signing Deion Sanders early in the season to come in and play cornerback for him. And I can tell you 100%, winning the Super Bowl in 1994 was a hell of a lot better than losing in the NFC Championship game in 1992 and 93. Really don't care that they went to the playoffs in 95 and 96 and 97 because 94 was a Super Bowl. So that's different. Plus, I'm an old guy too. So in some ways I just like to see the team play as deep as they can, but I understand the fan base, and as a fan base, you should want to win the Super Bowl. You want to have a successful team year in and year out, but if you can win the Super Bowl one year, maybe struggle for a couple, that's a way better way of going about it. Just trust me on that one. Now, real quick,
I'm sorry, but if you give the fan base an option, say, okay, you got two options. Option A is for the next 10 years, you're going to be competitive. You're going to be in the playoffs. You're going to win your division. You may even make it to a Super Bowl or two, but you're not going to win any rings. Or option B is you're going to win a Super Bowl this year. You're going to suck for 4 years. Then you're going to win another Super Bowl. Then you're going to suck for 4 more years. And then you're going to win another Super Bowl. What are you taking? Option B. And anybody who says option A is freaking crazy.
Well, and I got to point out really quick, when you look back in the early days of the 49ers, right? They won the Super Bowl in 81, didn't make the playoffs in 82, lost in the championship game in 83. Then they won the Super Bowl in 84. Then they didn't win a playoff game in 85, 86, 87. And then they won the back-to-back, but then they didn't win another Super Bowl in 90, 91, 92, 93. And then, so yeah. And if you were alive during that point, that even in 1988, after all that, Bill Walsh who's considered a genius, one of the greatest head coaches in the game. There were a lot of 49er fans who were not all that thrilled with Bill Walsh, especially midway through 1988 when that team was sitting at 6-5. But really quick, I want to go back to the quarterback discussion that we were talking about. Trey Lance, and you'd mentioned how you would move off of them and all those different types of things if you'd had to. Mook DeVillen says at Jackhammer, do you think it's wrong to judge Trey off a few games played? Yeah. Yes, it is wrong to judge Trey Lance in full off of a few games played. I don't know why people would think that it's okay to judge him off of a few games played. If you watch my channel and you read what I write at the Press Democrat, you see what I write on Twitter. I am very hard on Trey Lance, but I have also numerous times said that he's writing his story. He hasn't told us whether he's good, or he hasn't told us whether he's bad yet. He hasn't told us one way or another. He hasn't shown us what he is. Last time I checked, I think he's 500 as a quarterback. The offense in his starts usually doesn't score a lot of points, and that's not all on him, but just doesn't. We don't know what Trey Lance is, and we don't know if he's good or bad yet. So making a judgment on Trey Lance in either direction, I think is incorrect at this point. That's where I fall on.
I think making a judgment on any of these guys. Listen, Zach Wilson was a guy I did not like coming into the draft, and he's showing me every reason why I didn't like him. But even I am not going to start piling on at this point. I'm going to tell you the same thing that I would say for any of these guys. Wait till they have 3 years in the league before you fully know. Otherwise, you end up missing out on guys like Tua and Hurts. You just don't know. And even Justin Fields is a great example. we got to understand that was his 19th start? He blew up in his 19th start. But in his 13th start, he threw for 47%, 106 yards, 2 interceptions, no touchdowns, and had 2 fumbles. These are things that you miss out on. You realize that, and that was against the Texans, by the way. And let's not forget that we can't count the Texans for Trey Lance because it's only the Texans. But that was Fields' performance against the Texans. But when you look at Trey Lance in that game against the Texans, it took Justin Fields 15 starts and 17 games played to eclipse that passer rating that Trey Lance put up in game 2. So if you're enamored with Fields, and you should be because he's playing really good football right now, then you've got to be willing to give Trey Lance the same margin of error. Because if you judge Justin Fields after 4 games, you would have hated him. Oh, get him out of here. He's a scrub. He's this, he's that, blah, 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 blah. Well, now he's looking pretty damn good. So I would hold tight on judgment for any of these guys until they're 3 years into the league. And for Trey, unfortunately, his 3 years hasn't even started yet. Like, for him, he's not going to get the full 3 playing years, but he deserves 2 playing years before you really make judgment. Unfortunately, he doesn't get the 3 because they didn't play him year 1. He got injured year 2. You don't have the patience. You can't wait 3 full playing years to figure it out, but he certainly deserves 2.
Yeah. And real quick, and you're right. And I agree with you on that too. And then Jay Weil comes in with the super chat. So I got to hit this one up before we move on. He says, if Trey isn't 100% by August, September, what are the options? I think the options are what Jessie and I've talked about. So you go back into the free agent market and you try to find a veteran like Tom Brady, or you bring back Jimmy Garoppolo. There's options. It's not going to be, they're not going to move forward with Brock Purdy as their starting quarterback in 2023. So there would be movement. So we'll see what happens there. That's a long way to go. I think Trey's going to be 100% well before August and September, though.
They're saying March at the latest. They were saying that if they really wanted to not close the window on him, that he could have possibly been back by week 15. But they decided, hey, we're just going to shut him down just to make sure that there is no rush on him. He's not trying to get back, anything like that. We're going to end his season now, let him get fully healthy. By March, at the very latest, he'll be fully ready to go, but it could have been as early as January.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what they were saying, right? It would have been end of December, beginning of January timeframe. Now, you brought up Jalen Hurts a minute ago, and in your discussion on Trey Lance and so on, and I mentioned Jalen Hurts a couple of nights ago, and people got really fired up about that comment. I think a lot of people, it's quite interesting, some of the way people respond to my tweets, but why 49er fans should keep an eye on Jalen Hurts. That's what this topic is. And I mentioned that last Thursday night was the game, watching it. And I just tweeted out, Jalen Hurts is everything that the 49ers traded 3 first-round draft picks for in 2021. And I think a couple of things I took away from that. One, there's a lot of people that haven't paid attention to what Jalen Hurts is doing this year. That's number one. Because guy's he's right in the race for the MVP right now. He's playing dynamite football. And and to go along with that, they just felt like it was a negative on Trey Lance. And I don't think what I was saying at all was a negative on Trey Lance. It's quite the opposite, because you watch Jalen Hurts play, he's used pretty much the same way that the 49ers wanted to use Trey Lance. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say so. I still don't agree with the way that he was used. Here's what I'll say, and I did say this earlier. If the game plan was doing what they did with Trey Lance, Justin Fields should have been the pick. If that's what you truly wanted to do with your quarterback, then Justin Fields was your guy. If that was the game plan. I like what they do with Hurts, or did with Hurts early on. They did a lot of RPOs, which they really haven't done with Trey. It's just more like run option. Are you handing it off to the running back, or are you keeping it? But as far as just overall development, I do think guys like Hurts and Tua and those guys, they need to be, and I does need to be kept on them. And I think that Shanahan probably does look at a guy like Hurts and say, okay, well, listen, he was an underdeveloped thrower. If we kind of do this with Trey Lance, we can get the same results potentially. I just don't think Trey Lance is that guy. I think Trey Lance is a better thrower than a lot of these guys were coming out of college. I don't think he's as dynamic of a runner. And I personally don't think that's the game plan that I would use if I was trying to get the best out of Trey Lance long term. But that's just me.
Yeah, I look at what the way that the Eagles use Jalen Hurts, right? They're using him heavily in the running game, or at least they had been. They kind of backed off of that the last couple of weeks, partly I think because he's just been throwing the ball so well. So there hasn't been a need to use him in the running game quite as much. But just watching the way that he plays, the growth that he has from where he started in the NFL in 2020 to where he is now as a thrower, he's grown leaps and bounds. And you put Trey Lance kind of in that same bucket. You can't necessarily because of the injuries, but I had one guy tell me one of my favorites was somebody telling me that Hurts wasn't very good. Do you not remember how bad he was in his first 4 starts compared to Trey? And so I went back and looked at the numbers between the two in their first 4 starts, and pretty much the same, right? The numbers, if you look at Trey Lance's numbers, the totals are a little bit lower because he hadn't thrown the ball as much. But his yards per attempt was slightly higher. And we're talking about 98 yards difference between the two. If you take Trey Lance's, bring him up to the number of throws that Hurts did. So they're very similar in terms of throwers. Runners, they're very similar as well. I don't, and so for the folks that were saying that was a bad take, I think you need to take a second step back. Look at the way the Eagles are utilizing Jalen Hurts. Look at the way the 49ers are utilizing Trey Lance. I've been of the belief, and you and I had this discussion last year. I don't like the way that they're utilizing Trey Lance. I don't want to see my quarterback running the ball 15 times a game. At the same time, I get why, and it's because that's why they got him. They didn't go out and get Trey Lance just to have him be a pocket quarterback. They got him because they want him to be a runner as well. And I think that Trey Lance as a runner is a much different player than Justin Fields. Justin Fields is I think a much more of a off script runner. He's going to make those plays off script. That's where his runs are going to come from. Trey Lance, I think when it comes to him dropping back, he's very good as a scrambler. I think he's in the NFL. We've seen him be better as a scrambler than as a runner. That's the difference between the two, right? Scrambler, off script, runner, designed runs. So when I get they're both runs, but that's the way that I look at it. Yeah. And I've said this before. If the 49ers wanted a pocket quarterback, it's Mac Jones. If the 49ers wanted an off script guy, it's Justin Fields. If the 49ers wanted a guy that can throw from the pocket and run the ball, that's why you go after Trey Lance. That's and they've utilized him exactly doing exactly all the things that they saw at North Dakota State that drew him to Kyle Shanahan, and that's the way they're utilizing him. Whether I like it or not, that's why it makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, yes, but they're overutilizing the run to me, the designed run. Here's what I'll say. If I'm getting Trey Lance and I watch him play under center 39% of the time, I know that he's a full field read quarterback because that's what he was in college. That's what his quarterback coach personally told me on his channel, that they do full field reads. Vlad the Impaler for you, or Odd Job, whoever it was. So full field reads in North Dakota. He was doing that in college, like going through progressions left to right. We get it. Okay. So he called his own audibles, called his own protections. That to me is a guy that I want passing the ball as much as possible. However, I want him to use his legs to escape. And the way that I'm going to use him as a runner to help him is I'm going to move the launch point. I'm going to roll him out right. I'm going to roll him out left. But I'm going to allow him to play as a passer because that's what he wants to be. If I want a guy that I'm going to be willing to run 10 to 15 times a game, well, I don't know. They drafted. It's funny because now it makes a lot of sense. Remember when we thought they drafted Sermon because they wanted to play bully ball? And one thing that we did keep saying is, oh, well, they want him to play with Trey Lance because look at what he did next to Justin Fields. Well, if that's what the main game plan was going to be, then you should have just drafted Trey Sermon along with Justin Fields because they did it together at college. So just continue to do it in the NFL and hope that that game plan works. And the fact that it sounds like they never were even looking at Justin Fields. They were looking at Mac Jones, right? Who is neither of those guys when it comes to an athletic standpoint. Tells me that they would prefer their quarterback to be a throwing quarterback. So then when you play Trey Lance and you run him the way that you do, it to me, it's a head scratcher. It's a head scratcher the way that they've used him.
Yeah, it's really hard because I don't think I don't think the way that I'm trying to explain it's coming through. Because you mentioned Justin Fields. I think the reason that they didn't take Justin Fields is you watch Justin Fields, and we talked about this a minute ago. You don't know where he's going with the ball because he doesn't necessarily. He's making plays he's scrambling when he doesn't.
He's a playmaker.
Scramble. Yeah, he's just taking off running. He's doing those kind of things, and so I think that's for me with knowing what I know about Kyle Shanahan and watching him enough. I think that he doesn't like that style, whereas you and I have both agreed that when you watch Trey Lance, he wants to throw the ball first. He does everything that he can to stay in the pocket or stay behind the line of scrimmage and actually throw the ball on a called passing play most of the time. And so I think that's the reason why the 49ers go in that direction instead of taking Justin Fields. I think that's why they go with Trey Lance. And again, I don't remember seeing Justin Fields really utilized in the run game all that much to the extent that I think the 49ers wanted to. You can go back and look through Twitter and different places. I mean, this is something, the 11-on-11 football that they were utilizing Trey Lance to play is something that Kyle Shanahan has been talking about for a very long period of time, going back to 2018 and probably even before that, as something that he wanted to do on the offensive side of the ball. So I think, you go back and you just look at all the talk about that 20 and leading up to that 2021 draft. Oh, got to get a quarterback that can run. Got to get a quarterback that can run. Got to get a quarterback that can run. We got to be able to play 11-on-11 football. We want to play 11. Well, playing 11-on-11 football is using your quarterback as a running back. Playing 11-on-11 football isn't dropping your quarterback back to throw and then him scrambling. And I think that's where the disconnect was, because I think there's a large portion of the fan base that's very vocal that I don't think understood what they were really going to get when it became 11-on-11 football.
And I'm one of them, because when I hear 11-on-11 football, yes, I do hear, okay, use your quarterback as a runner. I think of things like, okay, maybe 3rd and shorts, 4th and shorts, goal line, those types of situations. And then I also think of, okay, even when he's dropping back to be a passer, the threat of him possibly running allows you to play 11-on-11, because as soon as you realize, okay, these guys have all backed off into man, I got cover one, these guys are all in man. Well, shoot, I got daylight in front of me. Nobody's open. I can take off. Now we're playing 11-on-11 football. And so I think there's different ways to look at 11-on-11. The way that I thought when he talked about 11-on-11 is what I just laid out. What we saw was, no, he meant he wanted to turn his quarterback into a running back. So what are you going to do?
What are you going to do? We're going to keep debating about this for the next probably, I don't know, until Trey Lance actually gets on the field and starts to perform like Jalen Hurts. It's funny because I brought that whole thing up. I was not expecting the people to think that it was a negative on Trey Lance. I should have understood.
How can you? Jalen Hurts looks amazing.
Well, because I think what happened is people look at that as a comparison. And again, I don't think very many people really paid attention to Jalen Hurts. I put out an explanation of that tweet. And one of the last things that I said was that Jalen Hurts is a fringe MVP candidate. And people, even the responses to that, as far as me saying that he's Jalen Hurts is number 2 on the board right now in Vegas for MVP. So,
yeah,
is Trey Lance going to be, was I expecting Trey Lance to be Jalen Hurts last week? No, that's not what the point of that tweet was. That was the direction that they wanted him to go to. Look at the development of Trey Lance, or of Jalen Hurts, 4 games played in 2020. Not so hot. Yeah, about the same as what we saw from Lance in 2021 or 2021. This was supposed to be the year for him, right? Year 2. Well, in year 2, Jalen Hurts, they were 9-8. He wasn't all that great, but they made the playoffs. And I think that's what the 49ers were hoping they were going to get this year. The next year you have Trey Lance in that MVP category. All that stuff's been pushed back because of the injury. It doesn't work now, but you get the point. So, hey, Jesse, we're bumping up against this. I know you got a show coming up on your channel.
I do.
Thanks a lot for doing this with me. It's always a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Yeah, this was a great show. If you're not done with 49ers talk, you can come over to Last Second Sports. We're going to continue it.
There you go. Perfect. So get over to Jesse's channel. Check him out. Before you guys leave, do me a favor. Hit that like button. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button as well. Hit that little bell notification to go along with it. Thanks to everybody that tuned in. I'll be back later on this week with some more fun content. Keep it locked into the channel because there's always stuff popping up every day. Take everybody. Talk to you soon.